Who are you? What's your role? And who do you work for?
Hi, my name is Rotem, and for the past 4 years, I've been the CTO and co-founder of a company called Ariga.
What are 3 Kubernetes emerging tools that you're keeping an eye on?
So I feel like everything in Kubernetes is still emerging, so I will take the liberty of talking about stuff that maybe has been around for a bit. So one is K9s. It's a terminal-based GUI for Kubernetes. I try to think why I like it so much. And when I was 5, my dad got me my first computer. It was a DOS box, and it had this application called Norton Commander, which was this GUI file system manager, and I guess it reminds me of that, so I'm really fond of that. The second one is Grafana Loki, which is an alternative to the ELK stack. For my team, it just saved us a lot of money, and it's much more stable than stuff that we've used in the past. Really, I like infra tools when they fade to the background and you don't need to think much about them. So really, shout out to the Grafana people. It's really awesome. And the last one, I feel this year in KubeCon is, we could say Argo CD is everywhere, but it's still emerging. I mean, it's really, really cool to see how many people are adopting it, and really great solution for doing CD on Kubernetes.
Relating to GitOps and platform engineering, one of our guests, Hans, argues that GitOps is an excellent building block for building platforms with great developer experience. He mentioned the ability to merge, review, and discuss code changes in pull requests, and the additional benefit of not granting permissions. Should all platforms use GitOps? What's your experience?
So I think that GitOps is a very sensible conclusion if you commit to the Kubernetes philosophy of declarative resource management. I think for a while we needed some concrete strategy of how we're going to take the stuff in Git and make it appear or be managed continuously in our cluster. So that's great. But having said that, I think that it's still a new world and a lot of topics are still not solved. For example, security or permissions. We basically don't have good controls of who can do what, who can manage which resource in our cluster. So perhaps there are still some gaps there. And of course, stateful resources have been a big pain for a lot of people, and there seems to be kind of a clash between the declarative philosophy and stateful resource management. So your mileage may vary. It makes a lot of sense, but it's still definitely not perfect.
One of our guests, Steven Sklar, shared that you can and should run a database on Kubernetes. The tooling and practices have matured since Kubernetes began, and you should run stateful applications there. What's your experience and advice with running stateful applications in Kubernetes?
So Kubernetes is amazing for managing stateless resources. If we think about the way the deployment controller was implemented based on this immutable infra philosophy, where we can basically provision the new thing, make sure it's healthy, and then throw out the old thing, that works really, really well for compute. But it just doesn't work for the database, right? You can, if you have a stateful component, you cannot just provision a new one and then throw the old one along with the data. So there is kind of a concept clash that we just to somehow remediate. I presented today a talk about GitOps, database schema changes, and rollbacks. And in this talk, I argued that the current state of the tooling really doesn't work well with GitOps, and that all of the classic schema management solutions that we try to cram into a Kubernetes job really don't fit in this continuous reconciliation loop, especially when it comes to rollbacks. Now, I've committed most of the last few years of my career to try to solve this problem and to build basically a Kubernetes operator that can do declarative schema management, can do basically allow you to manage a stateful resource in a declarative way. But I would say that if you have a resource that such tooling, mature tooling, does not exist, you should definitely not try to manage it from within Kubernetes. When you have an outage on your hand, you really don't want to have an immature tool, and aside from the problem at hand, to need to deal with a tool that is not fit to solve your problem. So yes, we have evolved a lot as an industry and we have better tools, but only try to manage stateful resources that have good tooling specifically for Kubernetes.
You mentioned building operators. One of our guests, Steven, shared some simple but effective advice on building Kubernetes operators. Keep it simple and use multiple CRDs. Do you have any advice on operators?
Oh, wow. Yes, I think one of the best choices we made as a company about a year and a half ago was to bring Atlas our schema management tool into the Kubernetes world by introducing an operator. And I think a few learnings from that process that we can definitely share with the community is one, be really, really focused on developer experience. As an operator provider, someone that's building an operator, you're basically making a promise to your users, offload the complex stuff to me, I will take care of everything. And to do that, you need to do two things. One is to really think about the API or the custom resource definition, what's the spec going to look like. You really want it to make sense and to really represent the different knobs that the user should have when managing, say, a database schema. The second part of thinking about the API is the status, basically what the operator is exposing to the user. Because to many users, the operators are kind of black boxes, they don't understand what's going inside. When you're managing complex resources, it's really, really important to expose the status. For example, if your operator is stopping the reconciliation loop because of some edge condition, you need to give an informative error message to the user. So think about the inputs, think about the outputs, think about your developer, about your user, make life easier for them. The second thing that's really, really important when you're building an operator, because of this promise we provide to users, we're going to take care of the nasty stuff for you. Make sure that you really have the expertise, because operators are about codifying operational knowledge into a program that can replace a human operator. So, for example, for the Atlas operator, our promise is, what if you had the best DBA in the world to manage your database schema changes? You would tell them what you want and they would take care of it. So we work very hard to codify operational knowledge from the industry into a program that can actually satisfy this promise.
Kubernetes turned 10 years old this year. What can we expect in the next 10 years to come?
I think that there will happen a process that's similar to Linux, where it kind of fades to the background. I think when I started developing, I needed to think a lot more about the operating system and whatever was available there, maybe even to install device drivers or stuff like that. And today I think all of that is really abstracted away from us. I think today we think about Kubernetes and building applications in pretty basic Lego blocks, pretty low level. And I assume that as our industry does to build higher and higher order abstraction, maybe in 10 years, when my junior developers from my team become CDOs themselves, their junior devs won't have to think about Kubernetes. It will be some implementation detail that exists in the background.
What's next for you?
So I've been 4 years into building Atlas and Ariga. I think we only began. We have a lot of traction from many companies and many users, but I think we still have a long way to go to get to the point where we can say that database schema management in Kubernetes is a solved problem. And I'm really looking forward to working with our users, with our community to fulfill that promise.
How can people get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me, if you go to the Atlas website, we have a Discord server for our community. Me and my team are constantly hanging out there answering questions. Feel free to write me a DM. I'm also on Twitter. I refuse to call it X, I don't know, but so feel free to DM me there. Happy to answer any questions.